Hi, and welcome to Nature Connects. Nature Connects is TNC in Massachusetts webinar series that connects you with scientists, experts, influencers, and our partners from New England and around the world. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Deb Markowitz, the State Director of the Nature Conservancy in Massachusetts, and your host today. Here at the Nature Conservancy in Massachusetts, we are dedicated to creating a healthier world for all. We work locally and globally using innovative science and scalable, long-lasting solutions to tackle the most complex environmental challenges facing our warming planet. We know that what we do here in Massachusetts to protect nature will mean a better future for people and the planet. So we have an exciting program for you today. Back by popular demand, we have Rene Wendell. He's Massachusetts TNC's land steward and naturalist extraordinaire. He'll be talking with us about the many species of reptiles and amphibians found across the state, 48 in total, although he may not be talking about all 48. Many of them are in our preserves. And during this webinar, Rene's going to show us a number of these amazing creatures, including the milk snake, wood frog, garter snake, dusky salamander, bog turtle, and red eft. Before we dive into today's program, I wanted to share a little bit about our guest. The son of a trapper, taxidermist, hunter, fisherman, and amateur entomologist, Rene Wendell never had a choice in life. He was always going to be an outdoorsman. He received his Bachelor of Science degree from the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts and worked for 13 years for the trustees as the property manager at Bartholomew's Cobble. He currently works for the Nature Conservancy as a land steward in Western Massachusetts, where he helps manage close to 10,000 acres of preserves. He enjoys ice fishing, looking for arrowheads, bird watching, and dandelion salads. As you think of questions for Rene, please enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And I want to thank you all for joining us today, and let's dive in.
Is that me?
That's you.
Thanks. All right. I thought I was going to be less nervous for this one, Deb, because we had some time the last time.
You were so great last time. There's nothing to be nervous about. So we're going to have a little conversation, but it's Rene who really knows so much about nature and amphibians and reptiles. And actually, before we dig in, what's the difference between them, a reptile and amphibian? As I was getting ready for this, I realized that I really don't know. And I would bet a lot of people who are watching today also have that question to start off.
Yeah, that's a good question. The amphibians are like the first animals that climb out of the primordial sea, and hit land and, branch off into what is today our world. But so amphibians have a real close relationship with the water. So they have a skin and, like a frog's skin. Lots of times they breathe through that skin. They can have lungs. A lot of them have gills. Their eggs are always or close to, or they're always moist. So that's an amphibian. Reptiles, if you think like turtles and snakes and crocodiles, they have a rough, scaly skin. Plates in the case of turtles, a big scaly skin in case of an alligator. And then, a lot of those breathe air. And then, I think clawed feet, like they have toenails and claws and stuff like that.
Toenails, I never thought about that. But they all somehow touch water at some point, or not all of them, but
not all of them, but like lizards, but yeah, a lot of these creatures have a big relationship with water. Yeah. Turtles and crocodilians.
That's kind of fun. So what do you have to share with us today?
So I think I did the same format as we did last time. I just did little snippets, videos with our Student Conservation Association partner, Ava Zigman. She's leaving us here at the end of October. Gonna go do her thing in nature, hopefully. She's awesome. But we just filmed them with clips as I was working and we were in the field and what we ran into. First thing we ran into, well, my favorite snake in the Berkshires, just a really sweet, docile snake. It's the milk snake. And Well, let's cue the clip, Liz, and we'll see what I got to say about that.
Tell us a little bit about the milk snake, because Zoom is prompting me to do an update for sound. So just tell us all about it while I do that.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a story about a milk snake. And there's been 2 events in my life that have really, like 3 actually, that really kind of just beat me up as a kid. So I remember we live on a little quiet cul-de-sac area, dead end street. And then there's another street that branches off that was dirt road. And I remember as a kid, there was a milk snake crossing the road, and the big kids came up on their bikes and they started shooting rocks at it and killing it. And I'm like, I lost my mind. I went back to my father crying. I'm like, why would somebody do that? And you think that's an isolated incident. It happened twice in my life. Wow. There was a smooth green snake right up the street from me. A green snake, like, I mean, and the father came out and killed it with a shovel. I'm sorry to be traumatic right in the very beginning here, but these animals can be persecuted. People don't understand them, and a lot of times when people don't understand, they fear. Yeah. And if you fear it, it's the next step is to kill it. So
I think I'm ready, Rene, if you want me.
Yeah, let's get away from this doom and gloom. I'm sure there'll be some more of that coming up, but that was my story.
Yeah, I bet people can relate to that, snakes have had a bad reputation. But look at you holding that snake.
Is an eastern milk snake. Look at this beauty right here. This is my absolute favorite snake in the Berkshires. All right, I remember catching these as a kid. Look at the bottom. Let me give you a checkerboard bottom. All right, what a lot of people, everybody's like, snakes, oh my God, they're horrible creatures. And every year I get calls telling me that somebody's got a copperhead or a timber rattlesnake, a poisonous snake, and it's usually this guy. But you can see, we were literally driving down the road, and I didn't want to hit it, so I swerved. I just picked this up off the road. This is the gentlest, most kind, beautiful little snake. It never hurts anybody, all right? I can't say I've never been bit by one, but they hardly ever bite. And this snake, he thinks I'm just a big, ugly raccoon that wants to eat him, so he's still super gentle. When I picked him up, he started shaking his tail. And sometimes if they do that in the leaf litter, it sounds like a rattle, so it sounds like a rattlesnake. So, but back to that, people confuse these snakes with copperheads. We don't have any copperheads in the Berkshires. There are some in the States. There's a couple of populations, but nothing around the Berkshires. And people are adamant and fearful, and I reassure them. Sometimes I'll move them, but oftentimes it's this guy. This guy will hibernate in people's fieldstone foundations underground. People wake up and they'll have a snake in their basement, and it's often usually this guy in the spring coming out. But this guy's totally harmless, just goes about his business, eating insects and little frogs and toads and such. And if he gets into a little package of baby mice, a little nest of baby mice, he'll eat all the baby mice too. So they're good for rodent control. So I'm glad we didn't hit this snake in the road, Ava. Eastern milk snake.
Hey, that's interesting. I know there's a lot of concern about Lyme's disease. And, and they come from mice population. And so I wonder if, having a milk snake in your backyard is actually great in terms of keeping the mice population down. So there's less of a risk of Lyme disease. I mean, I'm kind of riffing here, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And deer hunters too.
It keeps deer hunters.
But but they're awesome snakes. And I've watched these videos after I did them, and I just want to put something out there. All right, is we're doing these on one take. Like, I'm no Jeff Corwin. There's no rehearsed speech. So when I say poisonous snake, it's a venomous snake. I'm gonna make some mistakes because I'm just rambling on. I know the difference, but we're not redoing this. And if I get it wrong, tell me, that's okay. I'm not an expert. I'm not a herpetologist by trade. I don't get paid, lots of money that other herpetologists. no,
No,
but
people don't go
I'm
into
just,
that field for the
I'm a
money.
lay person. I just like to get out there and do some things, and I know little bits and pieces about things is all. So it's venomous snake. It's not poisonous.
So how big does the milk snake get?
They get pretty big. They're 3-4 feet. They're like one of our largest ones.
Wow.
And just the most gentle creature. Probably one of the most gentle snakes there are.
So that could be why people get nervous, because if you have a 3 or 4, like a 4-foot snake in your wall, it could be alarming.
Yeah, it's got patterns and people, it's all about education, and that's why I'm happy to do these things. That's why I'm happy when people call me up, and I'm more than happy to reassure people. And I've removed snakes from people's yard. Mostly it's basements. It's kind of where I started my career. Like when I was 10 years old, the neighbors would call me over and I would remove snakes from people's fields, some of the basements. Yeah, so, but
And
most people aren't like mean and aggressive people. They just don't know any better.
yeah. So do you know why it's called a milk snake? Well, there's people actually, let me note that there's a bunch of questions in the chat. If you want to put your questions in the Q&A, that's where I'm actually looking for your questions. So feel free to go to the question and answer, pop in your questions, and I'll bring them up to Rene so we can have, so I can get them answered as we're having this discussion.
I'm reaching, but I think I seem to recall like reading something back in the day about how they were associated with farmsteads, homesteads, and because they like barns and clapboards and mice, that they'd be around like cow enclosures. And I think like there was like some folklore around that they would drink the milk from cows' udders, it's like talking about craziness. I think that's right. I'm not sure, but I seem to recall something like that is why they're called milk snakes. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
And how can you tell that they're not a rattlesnake if they're rattling? Like,
and even if it is a rattlesnake, who cares? Just don't go over and pick it up. I mean, it's not a big deal,
well, there's that.
I didn't film anything for rattlesnakes today, unfortunately. We did have one call where I responded to, and Ava and I did a pre-film thing, but we never got the snake. It was underneath somebody's shed. And as long as the landowners are good, that's fine with me. If it was out in the open, I would remove it and bring it back up the mountain. But there's really nothing to fear, from snakes. This isn't India or Australia or Africa where they have massive snakes that if they bite you, you're going to die in 10 minutes. The rattlesnakes, hardly anyone ever gets bit. There's only been two times in the recent years that somebody's been bit, and it's usually somebody trying to catch them or to photograph them or something like that. And even if you did get bit, hospitals are close by. So, I mean, if you could look at that snake, you could see the beautiful pattern too. It's a lot different than a rattlesnake. But for a layperson, the easiest thing to do is just avoid it. Rattlesnakes just sit there. They don't do anything.
They're not going to chase you. So I would bet a lot of people on this webinar didn't really even know we had rattlesnakes in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Are they in all of the Berkshires? Are they all over Massachusetts? If you wanted to see one, where would you go? Are they protected species or common?
Yeah. So there's like 3 or 4 populations in the state, and then they're in mountainous regions. Unfortunately, with a lot of species, there's the illegal pet trade, and people kill them, and they're on the verge of disappearing from Massachusetts. So I really don't divulge where they're at. So Nature Conservancy helps to protect one of their largest hibernacula in the state, and we keep tabs on them. And I work with a researcher, Tom Tyning. He does the study along with Ann Stengel. They did a giant study and have pit tags, and they radio transmit them. We track them. But yeah, they're not common. If you see one, you're incredibly lucky.
And so How could you tell the difference between a milk snake? Is their skin different? Are they
Coloration.
so different colors?
Yeah. Timbers are more yellowish with some black markings. They can have a black phase. You saw that one. That one's really bold, kind of different, just colors. But again, just leave them be. If there's any sort of confusion, just leave it alone.
Just leave it alone.
Easy
So
enough.
that's a good message for
Walk around
everybody.
it. Yeah, walk around it.
Right? Just if see something, instead of it see something, say something, it's see something, and just look at it from far away and enjoy it. Enjoy it. So you've got another video for us?
Yeah, who we got next? Oh, yeah. This guy is an awesome frog. This is the wood frog. This guy comes out in spring. You can tell the winter's finally over when you start hearing these guys quacking in the vernal pools. I love these frogs, man. I used to catch so many of these when I was a kid. So cue to tape, Liz.
I'm going to give everybody a taste of what it sounds like first, and then we'll go to the video.
Yeah, I think Karen Lombard filmed this. You can see him moving in there. And lots of times you'll sneak up on a wetland like this expecting to see something, and all 100 wood frogs in there will shut down and they'll stop. It's so awesome.
It's a crazy noise.
All right, Abel, what we got here is a wood frog. And you can see how I'm holding him gently. I'm just gently putting a little pressure on his back feet, holding him like this. Definitely not hurting him. It's good to find this guy, take a break from our invasive species work down here in Sheffield. Wood frogs, man, they're awesome. So this is a terrestrial frog, right? So this, let me just fix him a little bit. There you go. So it's a terrestrial frog. This lives in and around the woodlands. This only goes to wetlands in the spring to breed. All right. And the wetlands it uses is vernal pools. So this is an obligate vernal pool species, meaning that it has to use these seasonal wetlands, vernal pools, to breed in. All right. And these pools, if they get filled in inadvertently, you know, for a driveway or a condominium complex, then this guy has no place to breed in. So that's why it's really important to certify and protect the vernal pools. But this guy will just go about his business in the forest floor, you know, eating little insects and arthropods and just living his life. And then he becomes food for a myriad of creatures, everything from barred owls to foxes and coyotes will eat these frogs. Really important member of our food chain. So I'm just going to let him go here. I don't think I hurt him. Just let him go. Here you go, buddy. And we'll just let him go about his way. Wood frog.
Amphibian or reptile?
Frogs, amphibians.
You're all going to get quizzed at the end.
Cool thing about these guys is when it's winter, so we're getting into winter. So these guys, they're not strong diggers. They don't go underground to hibernate. They'll just be in the leaf litter and they'll freeze solid. Their heart will stop, and they have like glucose. They have like antifreeze in their cells that make so their cells don't burst. The membranes of their cells don't burst. And then the warm weather come and they'll thaw themselves out and just start back up. Absolutely, absolutely incredible.
Oh my gosh! Didn't we have scientists that tried it with some people where they're
thinking that might be the way to go if we go into space, that if we can unlock the secrets of some of these animals that, you know, yeah.
I've seen those science fiction shows. So that's really cool. I've heard a bunch of things about vernal pools and just how important they are to our ecosystem, and that you know, the vernal pools, they might be ephemeral, meaning they come and go. Like you might be walking in a woods and don't see the water, but in the springtime it was there at the critical moment. And that the vernal pool is one thing, but you also need to be protecting around the vernal pool because these species move out from it. Is that true? Like, do we have to be concerned about development beyond where that wet place is?
Yeah, I mean, it's not always just about protecting the wetland. You got to protect a little upland too, you know. So mole salamanders, like spotted salamanders, I don't have one of those in today's show, but they'll leave the vernal pool and then go into the woodlands and go underground. So they need a place in the woodlands to go underground. I've seen some pretty degraded vernal pools where they just protect the pool and a little bit of buffer, and they're in people's backyards. They still function, but not optimally, not as they would if they had a bit more upland. I think you're exactly right.
We've got a few follow-up questions about this. Patricia Freisinger asks, she says, I hear wood frogs usually at night, but how would I actually find one to look at? Use a flashlight at night? I mean, you found yours during the day, like.
Yeah, I spend any time out in the woods. And I mean, you know, I'm a big advocate. So sometimes just walk off the trail, look in the woods, you know, and I mean, you know, make sure check yourself for ticks after, but just walk around, you'll find them. But that video of them croaking, boy, that can be heard from, you know, quite a ways away, especially if it's a large pool. So
what a great sound.
Then sit down and just, all right, so they're going to be all freaked out, and try to find a peeper in the spring. That's actually impossible. Or a gray tree frog in a tree that's calling. It's ridiculous. But sit down next to the vernal pool for a wood frog, and then they'll start back up slowly, and then they'll be swimming, and you can see some stuff. It's pretty cool to watch if you just sit down and slow down and take it in.
That's great. So do wood frogs have to keep their skin moist, and does a drought affect their well-being?
Sure. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, I used to keep animals. My mom was really patient with me, and I had a couple of wood frogs get out, and they dried out underneath the heating unit. You know, I think I'm paying my dues back now. I protected them, but yeah. So they definitely need to keep their skin wet. And that's why they're in, like, so you don't really find them in the middle of a cornfield, you know. So and then sometimes I'll find them like crossing roads, like, so sometimes you got to help them across an asphalt road. Imagine you take your socks off and walk on an asphalt road and feel how hot that is. So yeah, I'll help turtles and frogs across the road.
There's another sort of climate change, because that's like, as it heats up, it's going to be harder for everybody, right? But there was a climate change related question about the wood frog. Pamela Sinat asks, I understand the wood frog will be threatened by climate change as they need the snowpack to stay warm in winter. Is that so?
I don't know. I guess yes and no. I guess have to think about that a little bit more, but they don't go way underground. A lot of animals are in fact affected by snowpack. So basically, I think what she's alluding to is that if you've got a deep snow, that in essence buffers you from deep freezes that penetrate into the soil. So there are a lot of animals that go underground for hibernation or brumation or any other sort of mations for the winter. And if the freeze gets deeper and deeper because there's no insulating snow, that it could affect them. But the wood frog, he just freezes them so solid. So I think the wood frog would be all right. But you know, the changing dynamics of our forest, and you know, that's what TNC and other organizations are trying to figure out, how to best do it and how to best make it so that we can get through this nightmare of climate change.
Yeah, one of the things that makes TNC so powerful is that we are using like global science to help us figure out, like, you know, how do we make sure that we're ready for the changes that are coming, so that the as much biodiversity, as many species as possible can continue to survive and thrive somewhere on the landscape. And the Berkshires is an essential linkage with that, right? I mean, the work you're doing really is at a place of important connection along the landscape.
Yeah, we have some resilient landscapes out here because of our topography, so we have, river valleys and mountaintops. So it's thought of, if we start heating up and, the climate warms this way, sure, we'll get some different tree species and probably some more invasive species and stuff like that. But the critters we have might be able to find those cold areas that they need. They might be able to migrate a little bit up the mountaintop or find these cold nooks in the valleys. So yeah. I hope so. I hope we can. I hope it works.
We have a few more questions, but why don't we get to the next video and I'll come back around to these towards the end.
Yeah, all right, this is a quick one. I don't really have much to say about this guy. Let's just cue the tape.
All right, this is gonna have to go quick. This guy's a tough one. That's a Dusky salamander. Isn't he pretty cool? I'm flipping over rocks. Over here, there he goes. But that's all right. I mean, that's where he lives. Just flipping over rocks in this stream. The stream flows into TNC Schnapp Brook. It's a really nice, clean stream. We're out here looking for Japanese stilt grass. We're gonna pull it when we get a chance, but not a lot to say about Dusky salamanders. They're just one of our really nice stream salamanders. You got two-line salamanders. If you're real lucky, you can get a spring salamander, but you just flip over rocks in this area. If it's a really nice, high-quality stream, you'll have a lot of nice, salamanders and larvae and different stuff in here, but he was fun while it lasted. No harm done.
So who was that?
The Dusky salamander.
The Dusky.
Yeah, you think about amphibians, they breathe through their skin, you know what I mean? So they need a moist skin. So if you find a really clean brook, like that's just an intermittent stream. There's some clean brooks in the Berkshires where you flip over rocks and there's just a ton of Duskies and two lines. And then you got Dobson fly larvae and just amazing. There's one coming out of Beartown State Forest. It's one of my absolute favorite brooks. So they're indicator species because they breathe through their skin. So if you had a degraded habitat, if you got a polluted stream, you're not going to have the frogs and the salamanders because it's not good for them. It's toxic. So
what's so fascinating to me is the fact that there's such rich biodiversity that, you described that the stream isn't there all the time, right? Sometimes it's dry, and vernal pools are, they also are seasonal, not all of them, but many of them, and that it still is so necessary for biodiversity. Is that, I don't know, I think that's so cool. The idea that, in the time that something's flowing, there's so much life that's depending on it.
And that things can survive when there's no water. I mean, I love watching nature documentaries about Africa when they get like a rain every 4 years, what happens, but it happens here in the Berkshires too. Like you're talking about those vernal pool habitats. I mean, I could do one of these specifically on vernal pools. They're such an amazing place. So much life packed into a seasonal wetland. Incredible.
We have a question from Maria Wilkins. Can it be harmful to flip over rocks and expose like the larvae and so forth?
Yeah, so, in the name education, I was doing it, and when I was a kid, I used to see how many I could catch and stuff like that. But when you grow up and you mature, I don't do it all the time. But kids should. I mean, that's where the love of nature comes from. I mentioned that my mom used to tolerate me having garter snakes in cages and stuff, so I like the question because there's ethics, right? So I think that's what we should teach. I mean, I think that's what was missing when I was a kid. Like my mom should have said, all right, Ronnie, I'll let you keep the snake, but you know what? This snake needs a little food and we don't know how to feed it. So keep it a few days, let it go, and then put an American toad in there, and then you still foster that curiosity in kids and they still want to learn, maybe sketch it, put it in your journal. Like who was it, Richard Louv, The Last Child in the Woods and Nature Deficit Disorder and stuff like that. If we keep telling kids, no, don't do this, don't look for them, there's a danger in that too, because we lose a whole generation to cell phones and video games. So it's a balancing act. What I really, really, really hate, and everybody listen, is cairns. Don't build those infernal fouls rock stacks. Don't build those things. That the critters live under that. They need them, especially in brooks. I'll destroy everyone I see. I'm telling you right now. I destroy everyone I see. There's some mountaintops that are historic. There's some Indian, Native American ones on top of mountaintops. But even up there, there's animals that need them. Don't build cairns, please.
I have
Do
a
something
constant
else.
argument with my husband about that, who loves building them, and I always make him take them down. But I'm going to use you. I'm going to quote you. Is that okay? About just leave it as it is. It is. There's this really interesting balance. Like there's a book called Nature Deficit Disorder, and during the pandemic, we really saw how access to nature made a huge difference in mental health for adults and families. And if kids are only experiencing nature virtually, then they're not going to protect it. Like, we only protect the things we love, and we only love the things we actually know from experience. Not always, but that's the most direct way to love, is experience. And it's so important to get kids into nature, dirty, touching things. But you're right. I was actually touched by your conversation about how traumatic it was to see the killing of the 2 snakes. And it is, and I know that you're a hunter. I am a hunter, although I haven't been a successful hunter. That's why they call it hunting and not killing, but nevertheless, and that, it's different when you're going hunting. There's ethics around it that you're going to use, to consume, what you're hunting for. It's not just about killing, that's not ethical. And that there's this constant dialogue about how do we live ethically in our environment? How do we recognize, how to have that balance with nature and respect for nature?
It's all on how the people, basically, so how kids are taught. Teach them how to do it right. I did mention, like, so if you're going to flip over a rock, don't put the salamander back under the rock and then put the rock down. You would crush him. So what you do is you put the rock down and the salamander next to it, and he'll be able to find the way back underneath the rock. So it's all about teaching kids how to do it right, being respectful, I think.
Yeah. And, I think everybody, one takeaway for everybody who's watching is, bring a young person outside. I don't know if you've got a neighbor or a grandchild, a niece, a nephew, a kid, the more we can get the younger generation outside, the better for the world, I believe. And to just get them to be curious and adventuresome. And that's all of your homework. So we had a really interesting question about invasive species. So the question was from Sabine Vanderhende. I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong, but does Massachusetts have non-native frogs or invasive species that are threatening the frog population? And I would expand it more broadly and think about all of these reptiles and amphibians.
I know where she's coming from. So in California, they brought our bullfrog out there for the frog leg industry, and they got loose and they're just eating their way through California. Same thing in Australia. They tried to bring over marine toads for sugarcane beetles. The beetles aren't even on the ground where the toads are at. That was, oh my God. I hope we learn as people how to do things right. But not in Massachusetts. In the beginning, we mentioned we had 48 species. We really only have 45, but then there's like the red ear slider. That's the little pet trade turtle from the south that people buy, and they're in our ponds and stuff. I actually found one in the Berkshires. Then there's this weird, crazy Italian wall lizard that showed up in this garden area, this like communal garden area. So there's a few like non-native species in Massachusetts too, but not like what the question was. I don't think there's, I mean, hopefully we never get the chytrid fungus or any of the funguses that attacks amphibians. We don't have any of that yet. It's kind of similar to white nose syndrome, but we don't have that yet. So let's skip over that.
Yeah. So for folks who don't know, that there's a white nose syndrome, which is a fungus that was actually brought over by splunkers, people who do cave exploration, and it killed 90% of the little brown bat population. And in this whole area, has been very significant. And of course, that's a cycle. It means more mosquitoes, so it means more equine encephalitis and those other diseases, and then it's less food for. Anyway, it's really been devastating. And that's the problem with the small world, where we're traveling all over, we're bringing things back, and There was a question from Robert Singler who said, growing up in the Midwest, I'd find garden snakes under rocks all the time. That was over 60 years ago. I never see garden snakes around here in the Boston area. Do we have them?
Yeah, so it's Garter snakes, but that's the big white. I got that one coming up, and that's a great snake. It's an awesome snake. We do have them, and they're our most common snake. So it's just probably where you live, maybe it's just not conducive for a good population. Come out here to the Berkshires, get out of Boston. All right, that's what I want to recommend. Come on, I'll take you out. I'll get you first.
You can show them.
That's what I guess it's just the habitat would be my guess on that.
I think we've got some more videos. Let's see the next one. What do you have up?
Yeah, let's cue this one. I talk forever on this one.
All right, Ava, what I got here is a very special turtle. All right, I don't have to tell you about this turtle because the Nature Conservancy's ongoing research, but this is a bog turtle, everybody. This is Massachusetts' rarest reptile. You see him? Look at the bottom on him. That's a female, actually. She got a short tail and a flat belly. Yeah, Massachusetts' rarest reptile. Only 2 sites in all of Massachusetts, and the Nature Conservancy helps to protect both sites. And we work with the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program to do ongoing research on population dynamics, where they're going, all that crazy awesome stuff. So about this turtle's endangered, well, for a few different reasons, right? One reason is this specialized habitat you see here. We're in a forested like swamp. Right this way is a calcareous fen type habitat. You can't see through the woods. It's September, middle September, and these turtles are starting to go back to where they're going to hibernate in this forested swamp. Wetlands in general over the years have been degraded for the last 300 years. You know, they've been filled in, they've been ditched, they've been dredged, they've been converted to farmland. Take a look at this area. You could easily plow all this under, fill it in, and plant corn. So that's probably one of the reasons why definitely one of the reasons why this turtle is so rare. Also, it needs a specialized habitat. That's what I mean by that. Like snapping turtles, painted turtles are everywhere, right? They can live and do their business in ponds, lakes, streams, mud puddles. This gal needs a specialized habitat. So even when this was all nature here in Massachusetts, this turtle probably wasn't as common as the other species anyway. So it was relatively uncommon back in the day. Add to that degradation of habitats. And then the third big reason is look at this little adorable turtle. I just want to pinch his cheeks and give him kisses. A nice frog. Maybe we can do another one in here. So cute. Right now, what this turtle faces is illegal pet trade. So in Massachusetts, we've got only 80 to 100 turtles, these turtles left. But you can imagine a poacher comes into this turtle looking to score and make some money to ship these off to the Asian market for turtles, for pets. They come in here and they take 10, 15, 20 turtles. That's a significant percentage of the population in here who really do them harm. All right, so this turtle's relatively long-lived. It's cute. I mean, who wouldn't want this guy as a pet? All right, but let me show you a couple things, Ava. Let me switch out. When we found these turtles because we were tracking this female. All right, these turtles were together actually because they're getting ready for winter. All right, they're close to where they're going to go underground and spend out their time underground in the muck and the mud where it doesn't freeze. Let me show you this transmitter. Ava, you know this because here, show them the transmitter. Ava's actually working with Nature Conservancy and partnering with Massachusetts State Division of Fisheries Wildlife. Actually, I don't know if anyone knows Julia Vineyard. She's actually doing a graduate study on these turtles, and we're finding out some really awesome stuff. Actually, you put this transmitter on and then you follow this turtle. What we've learned in the recent round of tracking these turtles is we found 2 new places, not new to us, turtles knew where they were, where these turtles have been going. And we found turtles in this area that haven't been found in 20, 30 years. Angela Saroy Patel, my boss, she did her graduate study on this. There was another graduate study 10 years before that. So we've got a lot of data stored up on these turtles and where they go, and so how we can protect them. So then we can do habitat management when we know the ideal conditions that they want to be in. We know the size of the population, you know, the makeup of the species, the sexes. We can do all sorts of neat stuff to understand the life of this turtle. This little transmitter is very light. It doesn't hurt them. Obviously, you can see this is another female. You can see she's got a relatively short tail. But yeah, this is the bog turtle, and it's an incredible privilege to work for TNC, the Nature Conservancy, and work at protecting these amazing, rare, and just beautiful creatures that have a right to exist on this planet. And I'm proud to work for TNC, you know, when I'm holding something so precious in my hands. All right? All right. Bog turtle.
That's
A little tear, coming down my eye.
That is so great. So, you know, folks who are watching, you may not know it, that every other turtle you pick up, you know what they're going to do? They're going to go into the shell and hide. And so maybe not every other turtle, but most turtles, you know, when they feel like they're under threat, they'll hide. And so what makes the bog turtle so at risk is that it doesn't do that. Like you saw how comfortable it was and cute because it wasn't hiding. And so if you think about the illegal trade, you'd much rather have a turtle as a pet who's happy to see you, and as opposed to the one who, you know, every time you come near hides. And so as a practical matter, Rene's sworn to secrecy. He's not going to tell you where that is. And he's actually sworn to secrecy. He had to sign something that swore to secrecy. And I went to look at the bog turtles, you know, when I came out to the Berkshires for a tour, I had to sign to secrecy as well. And it's important because, you know, and we don't take pictures because they could be, you know, have that kind of geolocation. And so you know, taking that video was very controlled so that there's no way for somebody to identify the location of that bog turtle.
Exactly.
So we've got just a couple of questions about them. What's the diet of a bog turtle? Do the male and female bog turtles have the same markings? They're so beautiful, like that.
They eat slugs. So they eat a lot of slugs. So, you know, bog turtles don't move fast. You need to eat something that's slower than you. So they'll pick up slugs that you find in the fen a lot. And opportunistic, I mean, they'll eat whatever they can jam in their mouth. That's what, you know, bog turtles eat. And yeah, the male and the females are similar colorations. You know, the females have shorter tails. The males have longer tails. That's where they keep their sexual parts. And then the shell is flat on a female and the male's concave for reasons you probably can figure out.
The one of the folks, Pam Sinat, asks, I wonder if the turtle could be microchipped so it could be detected when smugglers try to take them out of the country. And there are some things we do to make them less attractive to smugglers, but if you can answer that, that's helpful.
True. Yeah. So the shells are notched. They have notches. So if a turtle's confiscated and it has notches, sometimes you can tell where they came from. But poachers are savvy, and they know that if they notch a bunch of notches, and you'll never know where it came from. A lot
so
of things are microchipped, like the rattlesnakes, we microchip them. And I think they may be starting to microchip some of the bog turtles. But yeah, but unfortunately with criminals and criminal empire, you do the best diligence you can, and they find a way to circumvent it. And the illegal pet trade is only second to the drug trade as far as illicit activity and money on this world. And it's terrible. And usually if you're trading in, illegal turtles, you're probably trading in drugs and all sorts of nefarious activities. These aren't nice people. These aren't good people that do these sort of things. Yeah.
I didn't realize that the illegal trade in animals is so high, and that's amazing. When, as you described, notching the shell. So what happens is you've got the perfect shell, and so when we find a bog turtle, we'll just take a little piece out of that shell. Doesn't hurt the turtle, but it makes it less pristine. It's filed down. Good, thank you. I had no idea how you did it. But the other thing you saw on the female, the second female, that there was this big radio transmitter, and that's cemented on the shell. And my guess is it's hard to get that off. And so it also makes them a little less attractive to poachers because, it's a little maybe hard to get that cement off. Is that true, or am I making that up?
It's an epoxy that really doesn't do the turtle any harm. You just if you wanted to get it off, you just find a little spot on it and put a little knife and just boop, it pops right off. That does not affect the turtle anyway. And this is a federally endangered species. This isn't just a Massachusetts endangered species. This is a federal protected species. So we do nothing to try to harm these animals, even inadvertently, like putting too big a size. Like it's weighed, like the transmitter's weighed, the epoxy's weighed, and there's norms. Like it can't be more than this sort of ounces. I don't do the study itself. This is Julia and Angela that have done the studies. So, I think Angela did one of these webinars on the turtle. So
yeah.
So expert.
You might note that in the chat, we have a link to more information about the bog turtle. It is really a success story for TNC, and as well as some of our, donors and folks who have helped us conserve really important areas of the Berkshires, because the bog turtles are moving. The populations have grown enough that they're moving into new places, and that is the kind of success story that we're really aiming for. Is we're managing a population in one place. The goal is to also have them spread so that there's enough populations to stabilize them, over time. So yeah, it's a success story and an exciting story, I think, for the Nature Conservancy and Massachusetts.
Yeah, the Nature Conservancy as a whole too, because we're in every 50 states. So we don't necessarily sometimes even recognize borders. So when we talk about protecting species, we're not just talking about our little two spots in Massachusetts. We look at the species, and one of our focal areas is the Appalachian Range. So we work with our other chapters, our sister chapters, and to protect a lot of these species. And that's the holistic idea that I think is going to start coming around with some of this protection for some of these animals.
Yeah. Hey, so we've got, I think, 3 more videos. And so
yeah,
we should keep moving because we want to make sure everyone sees them, because that's the fun stuff.
All right, Ava, what we got here is a really cutie patootie here. This is what's known as a red eft. If you grew up in the Northeast and you did any hiking on the trails, you knew this one. This is the one all the kids find and put them in buckets. This is when you learn nature. This is the one, big bright orange salamander walking on the forest floor. It's called a red eft. It's the terrestrial stage of the eastern spotted newt. It's a really cool little guy. This guy's kind of small. They do get a little bit bigger. But what's really cool about this salamander is its life cycle. So when it first starts out, it's a young salamander, baby. It hatches out and it has gills. All right. Then it comes on land, develops lungs, and then when it goes back to becoming aquatic to breed, it has gills again. So it's a pretty crazy life cycle. Also, the red Fs, people think that these are young animals, teenagers, right? But they're finding that some red Fs are 5, 6 years old. So that's not a young animal, that's an adult, right? So why be an adult for that long and not breed? Well, these guys are generalists, all right? They'll breed in ponds, lakes, pools. You know, they don't care where they breed. So if you're gonna spread your species around, right? You're gonna go and into the woods, walk around and find different pools to breed in and spread your genetics and spread the population. So this is it. Eastern spotted newt, red F stage.
Oh, those are really my favorite. I remember we took a hike not too long ago as a chapter, and we saw red Fs on. It had rained like the day before, and so there are red Fs everywhere. And also, for those of you out there who did the New York Times crossword puzzle, F is very often one of those clues. So you should remember the F.
All right, cool. So I know we've already talked about these guys, the newts, the eastern spotted newts, but what I got here is two as a comparison. So this is in transition, this one. So this is the terrestrial stage of the eastern spotted newt right there. And Jessica, this one's in transition. This one isn't totally green yet, but check out the tail on the red one, right? The red F. It doesn't need to swim, right? Because it's a land animal. This guy's tail, you see, is it starting to get fanned? Because he's going to need that to propel himself through the water, or herself through the water. So this one's not totally aquatic yet, but once it gets to the wetland, they'll go aquatic. Pretty cool. Ah, man.
Being eaten alive by mosquitoes. I want to make a correction too. So once the red F goes back into the water and becomes an adult to breed, it doesn't grow gills again. Like I said, I'm just rambling on to Ava about this stuff. I make mistakes. What they do is they gulp air from the surface and then they diffuse oxygen through the water column. So that's another one of my mistakes. I'm no Jeff Corwin, people. You know, so this isn't scripted.
You're awesome. You're awesome. And there's so many, facts and details that you can't get them all right. It's all good. And if there's any major erratas, we're going to do an email to all of you after the fact, and we'll include whatever little corrections need to happen. The basics, though, are here. These are really cool creatures. They're in our backyards, and they're in these important conserved areas. So is this another snake we're about to see?
Yeah, I think this is our last one in our series.
Hey, Eva, I'll show you what I got here is a garter snake. Wasn't intending to find anything today before we were about to go do some chainsaw work, but this guy's a really common snake. He's our most common snake, so I'm not surprised to find him out here at Coles Brook. What do you say about this snake? This is the snake that every kid learns on, right? You find garter snakes. Ooh, look, he just pooped on me. Seems to be a theme. Phew. Oh man, that is so disgusting. Did you ever smell it? You don't want to smell it. I don't blame you. So basically what it is this snake doesn't know. He doesn't know that I'm a harmless human that's not going to hurt him. He thinks I'm a big ugly raccoon that's going to eat him, right? So basically think about a raccoon, right? Sense of taste, a sense of smell, 100, 200, 300 times stronger than a person. I don't know exactly what the ratio is, but raccoons have a heightened senses than us humans. You imagine if you got pooped on by this thing and I can smell it and it smells bad. You imagine a raccoon can smell it. It smells horrible. Raccoon goes, oh, that's disgusting. Drops the snake. Snake has a chance to get away. So all it is a defense. I'm just going to wash my hands after this. This is a tiny garter snake, just a little guy. You can see this big yellow stripe down the middle. That's a diagnostic of this snake. You find a snake in the woods or around your home with a big yellow stripe down it, harmless little snake. This actually is a little guy. This is a juvenile snake. They can get quite big. They can get, a couple feet long. They can bite you, harmless. They have little tiny backwards facing teeth that grip slippery prey. If they bite you, just clean the wound with some, mosquitoes are horrible today. Anyway, that's the garter snake.
That's great. So, the garter snake is actually the state snake of Massachusetts. Thank you for the listener who put that in the Q&A. So they're that common. So we just have a little bit of time left, and we've gotten a couple of questions about that, are general questions like, are there things that residents of Massachusetts can do to be good environmental stewards? Are there books that you recommend on these topics? Any advice to folks who have been with us for this webinar?
Yeah. So, don't shy away from them. You got some kids, show them. I'm getting eaten by mosquitoes out there because I don't use bug spray and I don't use sunblock and stuff like that. So if you got it handling amphibians, don't have that stuff on your skin. iNaturalist, so I grew up with, let me see, I'm gonna grab these. I grew up with this sucker right here, the reptiles, like the little golden guide things. I can't tell you how many of these things got soaking wet in my pockets and ponds and stuff. That's a great one for kids, good Christmas stocking stuffer. Peterson field guides are awesome. These will tell you what you're looking at. They don't give you a ton of meaty stuff. I like this guy, Tom Tyning. He's an old professor of mine. This guy gives you some meaty stuff. He's got 3, 4, 5 pages on each one of the critters he's talking about. So it gives some more meaty stuff. And then, because kids naturally want to be on their phone and they want to be on the computer. There's this awesome website, iNaturalist. And you can actually make an account and you can log your sightings. You can take photos of them on your phone. The phone can identify it, automatically put a GPS point, and that can help researchers and state departments know where all these sightings are. So that's pretty awesome. And it's gotten better over the years. They're hiding a lot of rare species data. So I know when they first came out, that was an issue, but they're not doing that anymore. So those are just some fun things to do.
That's great. And, in terms, every single one of us can do things to help. And, from someone noted, leaving your leaves. And if you've got a yard, if you leave your leaves, there's no reason that you actually need to rake your leaves off and, for the winter. Leave your leaves, that creates habitat. If you've got forests, a pristine forest is a forest that isn't actually helping the species survive underneath. All that fallen wood is really great places for all these little critters to live and hide and breed and have their lives. And, of course, the work we do in conservation is very important. And what we're doing to stop climate change is really important. And so, getting kids outside, that's your homework. Maybe also thinking about, your own footprint, like how do you minimize your footprint? How do you make sure that you're enhancing habitat when you're the steward of that land? So let me just thank you. We're done. We're reaching the very end of today. And so, Rene, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. I know I had fun and I learned a lot. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I apologize if we didn't get to your questions. We had so many questions in the chat. I want to just say that for those of you who turned in, it's your support of the Nature Conservancy that makes all of this work possible. We are going to be sending everyone a follow-up email over the coming days with links to the resources we talked about today and a recording of the webinar. If you're enjoying these webinars, feel free to share them with your friends. You can also follow us on social media at conserve_MA on both Facebook and Instagram. And that's a good way to keep up with our work and to get updates on upcoming virtual opportunities to connect. As always, you can see our upcoming webinars and sign up at nature.org/MA webinars. And you can join us next week for a special update on our work on Martha's Vineyard. Thank you again for joining us, Rene. You were so fabulous. And I hope everyone out there has a great afternoon.
Thanks, Deb. You made it easy.
And you made it fun.